And in the Islamic tradition, we call such people the Naqshbandis, those who design you. Right now, society designs you. Right now, this class designs you. Right now, the books you read and the way those books trigger you design you. And they may be, for the most part, all wrong. But you won't know the wrongness of any of this until you hit a crisis. And then you try to resolve those issues with the resources you got, only to realize they're not working. You know, let's just say that you're a devout Christian. You run into someone who drinks too much or smokes too much or just a scumbag. And you say, well, I'm a Christian, I know compassion, I know forgiveness. Well, you keep exercising compassion and forgiveness until you say, I'm so exhausted, it's too much. It's perhaps much better to be a pagan. And because you, for the first time, you understand that compassion has a certain capacity. Abuse has a certain capacity. Forgiveness has a certain capacity. If you go beyond your own capacity of compassion and forgiveness, you're now entering abuse. And don't mistake abuse for compassion and forgiveness and passivity and being a sage. It doesn't work that way. Anyone else? Kruna.
How linked a slate within a person can be? Like what do you think?
I'll give you a couple of examples. And since it's a philosophy class, hopefully if I don't forget, I'll connect it to the life story and experience of Plato and Socrates. Let me first use an example that most of us can relate to. You have your life, you have accumulated a good amount of experience, and like all young people, I have no doubt you have your categories where you're profoundly arrogant, other categories where you're profoundly stupid, and other categories where you're somewhat intelligent and reflective and thoughtful and kind. But we are most often governed by stupidity. Now, this is Tuesday, you're walking to class, you're a single young woman, and let's say you run into someone, but you dismiss it, and you're attracted to them, but you dismiss the attraction because you have a purpose. You need to go to class, you need to graduate, you need to make your parents proud. And you run into the same person over and over and over again, and you say hello, and then how are you, and then what's going on, let me text you, all that stuff. But you keep coming to class. There comes a point where one morning you wake up like the example we used the other day, and you find yourself profoundly infatuated, obsessed, in love. And the person looks at you and says, let's go grab coffee. This is the final day of this class and we have a final exam. If you don't do the final exam, you will fail the class. And you say to the guy, well, can we meet like at 10? No, I'm sorry, just right now. Right now? Right now. And you know what happens when you're in love? You sacrifice all sorts of things. So you put this class, your future, on the cross and you nail them. And you follow this man. Love has turned you into a blank slate. The only thing that has given your life meaning and value and purpose and direction is the person with whom you're in love. So sometimes the only way that your passions and desires can be erased is by you intensely falling in love with someone. Now that's the eros part that the Greeks talked about. It's kind of like the fatal attraction scenario. There is another scenario that you can kind of, it's a bit more difficult. And The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy is one of that. It's where I have this friend in Grass Valley. Her name is Helen. She is, I think right now, I don't know, 92 or 94. I've been told that the past 2 years she's been thinking and talking about death a lot because she knows her time is up. She has met some very, very, very interesting people. Very interesting. But none of those people matter anymore. Her background no longer matters. She wants to know how she can walk to her sunset in a way that has dignity and respect. Okay? And sometimes when you get old, sometimes when you get really, really sick, it doesn't matter what you have, it doesn't matter who you are. Okay? If I was to use Socrates as an example, he believed in his philosophy of life so much that when they said to him, you can either go home, but on one condition, don't talk to anyone anymore. But you can kind of just have your life back without conversation with anyone. And you can kind of slowly walk to your old age and just die peacefully, hopefully. Or it will just kill you. He says to himself, I got a wife, I got kids, I like talking, I like thinking, I like the agora, the city where people are around and I can ask them questions. But you know what? None of those things matter. I am willing to sacrifice all of them for honor. I will just die. That's another way of slowly experiencing, all the things you've accumulated to be deleted from you. Sometimes it happens when a parent dies, that this immense grief consumes you and nothing really matters. And the only language you have for the first maybe 12 hours is tears and then jokes. But they're both rooted in intense grief and loss. And the other that happens is, going back to what we've talked about the past many times in this class, is you have your own life. It's a good life. You take a class. Let's say you take a psychology class from Abraham Maslow, Sigmund Freud. You know you want to study history. But then the first day of class, your teacher tells you, history is nothing but a collection of psychological feelings and thinkings. And psychology is nothing but the way society is. So it's partly also sociology. And society is based on a certain philosophy, so it's also philosophy. And you say, well, should I study history? And the teacher says, no. First study psychology, then study sociology, then study philosophy. And then you can study history. Now you have access to all these perspectives, you see. And add to it, you're slightly attracted to this particular fellow, this woman who's teaching this class. And as you begin to like this teacher more and more and more, you depend on yourself less and less and less. Where you go to him or her and you say, I was thinking about doing history, but now that I've come to this class, maybe I should do psychology. What do you think? It's a great idea. And then you say, I have a boyfriend. And he or she says to you, get rid of him. Says, okay. And all of a sudden you realize that you no longer have any thoughts of your own. You don't have any trust in your own judgment. You have what we call codependent relationship. And it's beautiful because you have found yourself to be dumb and you have found another person to be more intelligent than you are. He or she guides you. That's another way of reaching a blank slate. And they all have their own complications. But I'll tell you a story of Plato and Socrates. For those of you who don't know much about Socrates, he is basically the fountainhead of Western philosophy. No, that's someone else. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, Odyssey was written by this blind man named Homer, who, by the way, some say never existed. So we don't know who wrote the book, but You know, Penelope in that particular story had a bed made of olive wood, which was connected to a living tree. And the only person who knew this was her husband. We'll talk about that later. Now, Socrates was this young kid, like the salmon fish. He got lost in his imaginations and his feelings and thoughts. And one day runs into this woman named Diotima. The only thing that she claimed that she could teach him was the art of loving. For those of you in this class who like psychology, Eric Fromm, I think early 20th century, wrote this book called The Art of Loving, I think. It's a really, really, really good book. I first read the book in Persian, and then I read it in English, and I realized that Fromm would have done a far better job if he spoke Persian. So, that's the only thing Socrates knew, love. So if you went to him and said, so what did John Locke say? I don't know what he said about society. I don't really care what he said. John Locke said a lot of nice things, but he didn't have the scent of love. So I just dismiss his philosophy. How about Heraclitus? Yeah, Heraclitus said some nice things. The Atomist says some nice things as well, but they didn't have the fragrance of love, so dismissed them. And since the only thing that Socrates was able to learn from this old woman was love, that was what was in his vessel, in his container. He could only teach love. So as he walks around town to see who is in the right place in life to receive the sort of love that he has inside him, he runs into this young man named Plato. Plato is about 18, maybe 16, I don't know. In the ancient Greek, what you do if you happen to be in a privileged position in life, you write 3 plays every year, and you submit your plays to a committee. The committee looks at the plays. If they like it, they give you this prize, and you're the best poet in town. And then your name is inscribed everywhere. And Plato has won this 3 years in a row. All of us are born to be proud and arrogant without having done much in life. Imagine now if you have done something, like won this competition 3 years in a row. Your pride and your arrogance is multiplied 1,000-fold. His father is a politician. He's also a lawyer. His mom is very, very, very religious. Now, some people also claim that Plato, his father, was named Apollo, the sun god. All of the time. So I tell you the background because the more privileged your background, the more intoxicated you're going to be about yourself. I'm great. I'm intelligent. I've won all this competition. I love my dad. I love my mom. I'm rich. He runs into Socrates. Socrates is ugly. I mean, physically ugly. He's worse than an 18-wheeler truck. He's really, really ugly. Socrates is beautiful. He's got a chiseled jaw, high cheekbones. He's like 7'10". I actually don't know. And Plato looks at Socrates and says, wow, he's such a beautiful man. It doesn't make sense, Kruna. Because that's not the way our sensory organs work. Our 5 senses gravitate towards that which is beautiful. Someone who has a nice skin, someone who's got nice lips, nice nose, nice hair, nice body. Because your senses They gravitate towards whatever out there that's beautiful. And there is nothing attractive about Socrates. He's got a beer belly. I don't know who that is. That's Abraham. Yeah. They say he was ugly. I'm just going to trust history and just say he was very... I don't know how he found... I mean, some people say he didn't exist. I don't really know. The point is, he was ugly. He was more ugly than Snoop Dogg. Okay. I mean, he was really, really, really ugly. And he runs into Socrates and says, I don't know why. My eyes say he's ugly. My nose says he smells bad. But my intuition says there is something divine and majestic and beautiful about him. And Socrates looks at him and very crudely says, what do you have there? I got plays, because he was walking towards the committee to submit his 3 plays. Plays? Plays on what? Comedy and tragedy. Why do you write them? I mean, you're a kid. You have zero understanding. Why do you write plays? Because of ABCD. Well, why do you want ABCD? And he comes to realize that when Socrates asks him questions, he doesn't know how to respond. And he goes home a bit puzzled, like the Buddha. You know, something about him cracks open. And then he goes out the next day and he says, I'm looking for that man, that old, ugly man. And as they begin to interact more and more and more, Plato comes to realize he's becoming less and less and less. He goes less to his father with questions. He goes less to the sacred place to worship with his mother. He doesn't hang out with his friends anymore. He doesn't write anymore. He just follows Socrates every single day for about almost 10 years. I don't know how Plato was when he was young, but Socrates, when he entered into Plato's life, Plato disappeared and Socrates entered. And when you read the dialogues, which is about like 2,000 pages, it's all about Socrates said this and Socrates said that. That is another way of becoming a blank slate. The only thing is, عشق‌هایی که از پی رنگی بود عشق نبود عاقبت ننگی بود. That most of us fall in love with colors. And colors in the hands of time, in the hands of the sun, the wind, the rain, they will oxidize, they will diminish in luster, and then the only thing they can do really is to disappoint you. That's رنگ. That sometimes we fall in love just because someone talks well. Sometimes some people look well, or they have a nice car, they have a big this or big that. And Rumi says, if you really want to fall in love with a thing that does not become corrupt by the hands of time, fall in love with a Socrates. Fall in love with an Angela Davis. Fall in love with a Malcolm X or a Plato. They are eternal. They are immortal. I mean, look, this is 2023. We talk about Plato and Socrates, people who lived some 3,000 years ago. Why do we do that? Because their colors, they won't diminish. They don't taste oxidization. They are eternal, immortal. You know, they are like the pillars of humanity. Going back to Nietzsche, and we'll talk about this German philosopher at some point in this class. Humanity is not judged by its lowest common denominator. 90% of humanity is just stupid, unreflective. Not because they want to. Life is just busy, man. Life crushes you. Ask any woman who had an agenda, wanted to be a high performance woman. Ask them what happens to them when they became a mother. Motherhood sucks the life out of you. Whatever agenda, whatever purpose you had for yourself in life, the kids will steal that from you. Unless you're rich enough to hire people who can just raise your kid. And they can just come in once in a while, say hello, and then go to your bedroom. Okay? And so Nietzsche argued, if you want to know why human beings or humanity has not been yet destroyed completely, because once in a while humanity creates an Angela Davis. Once in a while we do create a Socrates and a Plato and a Karl Marx. We don't know how they're created, but they inspire 90% of the human race. They help us evolve and mature intellectually, emotionally, socially. Any other questions before Josh?
As products of the society that we live in, how do we find a Socrates and not the abusive husband that you spoke of in the movie, The 30 Day? She was, you'd say that love blinds us.
Yes.
So how do we choose a Socrates and not an abusive husband?
I don't think it's about choice. I think maybe 80% of it is luck. Let me give you a story that comes from the New Testament. I think it's either the Gospel of Matthew or the Gospel of Luke. It's about the farmer. I don't know what the story is called, the title of it. But what happens is you have this farmer, and farmers are in the business of only one thing. You know, throwing seeds, nourishing them, and hoping that these tiny little green stems will come out of the ground and eventually they'll become a gigantic tree. That's how farmers are rewarded. So as this farmer is walking, he has a bag filled with seeds. The bag has a hole in it. Some of the seeds fall on concrete. Well, concrete doesn't have the capacity to absorb the seed. Some people are concrete. It doesn't matter what their questions are. It doesn't matter how curious they are. They're just concrete. They just don't have the capacity, at least at that stage in their life. The only way you can plant something inside them is to go into Home Depot, renting a big size jackhammer for about $140 a day, jackhammering it. Now, the problem with jackhammering a psyche is that they're going to say, oh, you're abusing me, I'm going to complain. You're invading my private space. And depending on, as a farmer, if you're a young farmer, you have lots of hopes and imaginations and fantasies. Yes, I'm going to jackhammer, they're going to be receptive, they're going to be forgiving, they'll take the seed and something gigantic will grow. No. If you happen to be a little older, especially like arthritis, you know, if you've been there, you've done that, you're exhausted, you know the capacities and nature of people for the most part. You say, you know what, I'm not looking for a concrete human being. So as you walk a bit more, some of the seeds fall on good ground, but it gets trampled upon by people. That yes, you may enjoy ideas, but you have a job. Your customers crap on you on a daily basis for 5-6 hours, okay? You go home, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, they suck. You go home, your parents are never there. You have a history that all the stuff trample on the ideas on a daily basis. These seeds, you may have the ability to receive the seed, but you just don't have the lifestyle. You don't have the emotional history or the intellectual history to receive the seed and nourish it. So eventually you will trample all over the seed and you'll crush it. You have some grounds that are really, really good. Okay? But you have lots of vultures there. Your mom says, I'm sick, take me to Kaiser. Your boy, you have children. Mom, can you take me here? Can you take me there? You're taking 12 units. And these are like things that come into your life and snatch away time, energy, focus. And then the seed eventually will have no place to go but to rot and decay. There are some seeds that are received by good grounds and they are protected. They are nourished. Now, if your question is, well, where do we first of all find the farmer? I don't know. let's just say you have found the farmer. Are you the one who has the right capacity? In other words, is your life busy? Do you have children? Do you have a wife or husband? Do you have like 2, 3, 4, 5 jobs? Are you taking school units? And if the answer is yes to all of them, your life is way, way, way too busy. And you have one of two things to do. You can't serve two masters. It's impossible. You can't love your physical life and love your spiritual life. It doesn't work. Your wife demands your time, your energy, money. You spending time with her, with the kids, cleaning the house. Now, unless you happen to be like one of those ridiculous, stupid, new age teachers or gurus, imagine washing dishes like your spiritual task. Resolving conflict with your companion, that's your spiritual task. No, it's not. You know, you have to be immensely evolved, okay? Like Socrates, to say death is going to be my spiritual purpose. You don't find people like that, where they have accepted their past, their present, like Malcolm, and say, you know what, if I go on the stage, if I'm talking, if I get shot, that's fine. I have lived a full life. So since you and I can't serve two masters, one needs to be loved, the other will have no choice but to be hated. Okay? You will eventually have to say, okay, am I going to remain concrete to keep my physical life going? Or am I going to be a good ground that the roots will go deeper, pushing the gravel out, my wife out, my kids out, my job out, my interest out, my joy out, my happiness out? Eventually what happens? The deeper the roots go, the darker it's going to be. And the truth is, I don't really know who can find a teacher. I don't even know who is a teacher. You know, people who lived in Dave Koresh's town, or Jim Jones, or, you know, the spaceship people, let me just end the class with this. You and I can be broken in a couple of ways. You can either be broken by life, or you can be broken by a Socrates. Now, the truth is, life just breaks you. I mean, you walk into marriage, or you walk into a class having all these high hopes, and life proves that you're wrong. You think you're always going to be 20, and one day you wake up, you realize you're 60. Okay? That's how life works. You get broken. But when you sit your kid down when he's having fun, and you say, Jacob, this is called a pencil. And he says to you, Dad, I'm playing soccer. And you smack him on the head. Jacob, sit your little ass on this chair. This is a pencil. This is called a sheet of paper. I need you to write A. But Dad, I'm having fun. You're breaking him. But there is a certain intention that you have that your son doesn't know. What you're saying is, learn the alphabets. I don't care if I come in between you and your fun. I will break your fun. It doesn't matter if you cry. It doesn't matter if you throw a temper tantrum. I, as your father, know that when life goes bad and your life begins to smell and you have all these emotions inside you, you better know how to speak well. You better know how to express yourself in writing, because they are your Jesus Christ. They are your salvation. Writing, talking. Now, teachers walk into your life and break you with an intention. If I get rid of all of your missions in life, you will only then focus on psychology. If you focus on psychology at the age of 17 and you fall in love with it, you'll have a PhD by the time you're 25. And when you're 25 with a PhD from Stanford, you can go teach at Yale. And you'll make about $200,000. Your social status is immense. You're not going to go to a bar to find a companion. You're going to go to all these workshops, all these seminars. You're going to find someone who is equal to your own intellect. And you guys are going to come home and you're going to talk about your research. Then you're going to have kids. And you're going to push your kids towards psychology. Now, that is a meaningful life. Because you allowed yourself, or you were lucky enough, to be pushed towards psychology, history, philosophy, math, whatever the case may be. And that teacher made you a blank slate. And then he or she wrote on you. That writing gave you a mission. You went to East Bay and you did psychology. 5 years later, your life is great. Now, that's a good way of being broken. Okay? So, yes. Naomi?
If someone has gone through grief for a long period of time, is there a way to get past it?
We don't get past anything by force. It's like you like someone, or your boss said that we're going to fire you, you just don't have enough funds, and this is your only job, and it pays for food, pays for your rent, pays for your car, maybe pays for your son. And that's a very traumatizing experience. And it's midnight, you're tired, you're exhausted. You want to sleep, but you can't. And you keep telling yourself, this too shall pass. You know, the stuff of the religious scenario. This too shall pass doesn't work for you. And you say, oh, well, the birds don't save. They don't think about where their next food is coming from. Have faith. That's what JC said. And you try to do that, but it doesn't work. And the more you try, the more restless, the more anxious, the more frustrated you become. And the point I'm trying to make is this. Everything has its own seasons. Something enters into your life, you begin to experience a good amount of loss that causes grief. Now, we are not the sort of animals who enjoy pain. We will do whatever we can to get rid of it. The pleasure-pain principle. Now, by force, you can make the summer come. It just needs to be here for about 3-4 months. And eventually it'll turn into fall. And that's how it goes. So what happens is, your life is going smoothly, an event happens, you are crushed, you lose something, you're in pain, you try to fix the pain, it doesn't work. And the pain turns into sadness, it turns into sorrow, it turns into grief, you're depressed. Now, the more you try to get yourself out, like quicksand, the more you get stuck. Now you become angry. You become angry because you're incompetent. You become angry because life treated you unfairly. You become angry because your parents don't stop nagging. Okay? No one really understands you. And then you say, okay, mom, if I was to do A, B, C, D, will you just shut your mouth? Now you try to bargain with the forces of life, but you can't control life. They have no power over them. And eventually what happens is you get really, 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 really depressed. And you sit in depression. And no one knows for how long. You know, no one knows how long the storm of anger is going to last. No one knows how long the storm of bargaining is going to last. No one knows how long the season of depression will last. But should it pass, you will come to experience something profoundly magical. In Buddhism, we call it the end of opposites. You accept. You accept. You accept. And since we're out of time, we have to accept that. So listen, forgive me for just rambling on for 5 hours. It's good to see all of you. See you on Thursday.